Hello and welcome to Tools to Create a Better Life with myself, Glenyce Hughes. Thank you so much for listening in and for watching. As you might have noticed, depending on if you follow me on social media and stuff, we now have this podcast slash video in both formats. So it is, you can see it on my YouTube station, you can see it on different Facebook groups, sometimes on my personal page. If you want to view it, you can also listen to it on your favorite podcast app. You can just search Tools to Create a Better Life, and you will see that there's one there. It's now been, I think, over a year. Well, yeah, over a year that I've had that one. You can also search The Glenyce Show, and that one is years and years and years. I started that one in 2013, so I have lots and lots of content out there for you to enjoy. Let's talk about today's show. Today's show, are you letting people show you who they are? Yeah. So this is a huge piece for me. This is something that I have not chosen pretty much, I would say, only in the last few years, and even only really so much more so this year. Often what I would do, and possibly what some of you are doing, is we have these amazing capacities to see the potential in everybody that we meet. In fact, the moment we meet them, we are aware of what's actually possible for them. The problem is that we often do the judgment thing of, and that's what they will choose. Maybe not judgment, the conclusion, and that's what they'll choose. So then we make choices with them based on our awareness of what they could choose, not what they are choosing. Because what is possible for somebody to choose and what they're choosing, can be two very different things. And so for those of you not watching this on video, I am sitting on my deck recording this, so you might hear some birds and some outside noises, just so that you're aware. For those of you who are watching this, you might be able to see the trees behind me. I am recording this early September, and the leaves are starting to change, my friends. So anyway, back to the show. Instead of acknowledging what they actually are choosing. And the other thing that I have just found so valuable in these past few months is like really trusting what people are showing me. So if somebody says, I don't know, they'll meet me at 4 o'clock and they meet me at 4:30, then I don't have to go into reason and justification of why they're late. I don't have to make them wrong for being late. I can just go, okay, so they showed up at 4:30. And next time, I don't necessarily have to go to the conclusion that they'll be late. That's not what we're doing either. But really the awareness of like, okay, so you could even say to the person, so last time you said 4, you showed up at 4:30. What time actually works for you? Or do you want to let me know when you get there and I'll meet you there, or something, right? It goes beyond the drama trauma. And this is often what we're doing when we play the game, that they will be who their full potential is. We set ourselves up for drama. We set ourselves up for problems and for fight and for disappointment and for expectation and all of those energies that are so freaking heavy, rather than letting people show you who they are. But again, not from the conclusion of, well, they were late that one time, they'll always be late. It's not that. But also not the pretending that, oh, they didn't mean to be late, they would have been on time if it wasn't the whatever, blah, blah, blah. Like, just let them show you who they are. And so if you have that experience with somebody where you've decided based on what you're aware of what they will choose, rather than what they are choosing, that's where you want to be using some tool. So I utilize the tools from Access Consciousness. So you can just go through and like destroy and uncreate all of the expectations you have of the person, or all of the decisions, or all of the fantasies you could clear. I mean, it just really depends on the situation. But making sure, especially if those people are in your life a lot, that you change that and you start you start acknowledging what they are choosing. So when I facilitate foundations, which I facilitate prior to COVID around the world, but of course many online options now, so we'll have a link somewhere so that you can check the upcoming ones out. I would often use the example of somebody who is getting abused in a relationship, because we'll have the awareness of what's possible for them. So we're aware that it's possible for them not to be abusive. We're aware that it's possible for them to choose kindness. And so then people often make the choice to stay based on that. So it's like, oh, they come home, they hit the person, and the person who got hit does the justification and the like the energy of like, oh, well, they didn't mean it, or they won't do it again, or they promised they'd never do it again. But they don't acknowledge that that's, you know, the 5th day in a row, or the 50th day in a row, or 500th day in a row, rather than going, okay, so they hit me. Truth, does that work for me? And this is the question that we often won't ask. Truth, does this work for me? Now, why won't we ask it? There's probably a billion reasons why we won't ask that. It's not, that piece isn't relevant. What's relevant is that you want to start asking that. When somebody shows you who they are, start asking, does that work for you? Because if it doesn't, you actually have another choice. You could say, hey, you know what? When you hit me, it doesn't work for me. So I'm going to go now. I'm going to move out. I'm going to leave, whatever. I mean, I know I make it sound really simple, but if you take out the drama trauma, it actually is really simple, my sweet friends. And I know I'm using an extreme example, but use that on anything. If you have a boss who's always degrading you in front of people at meetings, instead of reasoning and justifying what they're choosing, truth, does this work for me? And if it doesn't mean you have to quit. Okay, we don't have to go to that extreme, but you could look at, okay, what is it going to take to change this? It might actually it might be having a conversation with them and saying, hey, when you do this, I feel sad, I feel mad, it hurts my feet, like whatever it is, you know, and I would like you not to do that again. So sometimes it's just a conversation, and then if they continue to choose it, then okay, cool, now you've got the information. That's a term I use a lot. It was actually a fellow certified facilitator with Access Consciousness a number of years ago, and her and I were having lunch in Rome at a certified facilitator class, and we were talking about people who were choosing certain things that maybe we didn't like that they were choosing, and I was going into the reaction of it and like, oh, they shouldn't do that, and rah rah rah, and she just looked at me so sweetly and she said, but Glenyce, it's just some information. They're just giving you information. And I was like, whoa, because when you take it from that aspect, there's no personal involved. Right? If I make it about me and they shouldn't and they're wrong and I'm wrong and like all that crazy, I've made it very personal. But every choice that every person chooses is their choice. It's not personal unless we make it personal. And that's, again, where it becomes the problem, because we've made it personal. And then we have the story, and then we have the drama trauma, and then we have the invention, and then it's so exhausting. Instead of it just becomes information. So, you know, if somebody says they're going to do something and they don't do it, you don't have to take it personal, and it becomes information. So maybe next time you don't ask them to do it. Or if you do, you don't ask them from the energy of like, well, this time they will. They may not. Again, we want to walk this really carefully, because we don't want to do it from the place of, you know, if they do it once, they'll always do it. Like, it's not that energy either, but it's also not the pretending that people are always going to choose what's possible. Because I don't know about you, but me, I don't always choose what's possible for me. I know you're shocked by that, but I actually don't. I'm kidding, of course. You know, we choose what we choose when we choose it. There's no reason, there's no justification for it. We choose it when we choose it, because we choose it. No other reason, no nothing. So if we have all this story and invention around what other people are choosing, it becomes really exhausting for us and it becomes really limiting. Plus, then we never actually acknowledge what is. And acknowledging what is something that can change so much for us. Because otherwise we're in the reasoning and the justification. Well, they hit me because their dad hit them. And oh, poor them. And we make them a victim to it without acknowledging, like, hey, actually them hitting me doesn't work. So then we have another choice. Once we acknowledge it, then, okay, now what could we choose? Now what could we choose? So it goes back to that. And if you guys have listened to a number of my shows, I often talk about this because it's one of the hugest pieces that I got from utilizing all of these tools and all of the classes I've taken with Access Consciousness is the honesty with us is the number one way to change anything. If we're willing to be honest with ourselves, if we're willing to tell us what is true for us in that moment, we have available to us so much more than when we're playing the reasoning, the justificationing, I don't know if that's a word, I'm making things up now, but when we play in that energy, it becomes extremely limited because we're putting all of our creative energy into that, into the story, and stories are never real. Again, people choose what they choose because they choose it. No different than us. We choose what we choose because we choose it. Anything else makes them a victim or makes a story or ties us up into knots around it. Rather than what's true, we choose and they choose. That's it. No personal, no story, no nothing. And then we get to be honest with us. What works for us? What works for us? If something doesn't work for you, let you know. Let you know. I've sent out in emails, I'm not sure if I've ever spoken about it on the radio, but I've sent out in emails about how I healed debilitating arthritis. And it was back in 2015, early in 2015. I don't share much of the story because when I share a story on this format, it's only from the place of if everybody that I'm talking about is on board with me sharing it, and it's not something that I will be discussing with this other person. So I give you bits and pieces, but you'll get the energy of it. So with this, what occurred was that somebody had told me something and I was very excited about it. And then about 6 months later, they changed their mind. And I was very, very disappointed. The problem is I didn't let myself know. What I did with that information was I turned it around and I reasoned it and I justified it. Well, that's their choice. They have a choice. That's their choice. I can't they're basically they were right and I was wrong. And I didn't even let myself know how disappointed I was or how hurt I was or how upset I was. I made it I just reasoned and justified it. So what occurred was a week later, 2 weeks later maybe, I was at a 7-day in India with Gary and Dane. 7 days are just amazing classes. So I was at a 7-day in India and I started having problems with my one knee. And my room at the resort we were at was only 1 floor up. So I don't know, 10 steps, maybe 10 stairs. And I remember being horrified because I had to take the elevator. Otherwise, it was excruciatingly painful. So there was nothing. I hadn't tripped, I hadn't fallen, I had no reason for this knee thing. So I was like, okay, well, you know what? I'm getting body work in the class every day, so it'll go away. Continued on in March or April. I can't remember which month. Hubby and I were traveling again, always traveling before COVID, and he had to push me in a wheelchair through an airport. I was beyond horrified. And by May, it had got bad in both knees, so bad that I could barely walk. And the other acreage that we lived at, I had a special spot on a hill that I would walk down to normally, but by the end of May, it had got so bad that I actually had to use the garden tractor to get myself to my favorite spot. And I remember sitting there and just crying and crying and crying because I didn't I didn't know how to live without my legs. I mean, yes, wheelchairs, all the things. And in that meantime, I had went and seen a chiropractor, and he said, "You know what? It's arthritis, and it's only going to get worse." So, I'm sitting in my spot end of May of 2015, and I'd done all the tools. I felt I had done everything. I'd done all the body processes, and finally what I did was I actually treated myself as though I was a client, and I just said, "Okay, Glenyce, when did this start?" I was like, okay. So I looked back and I could remember India very clearly because of not being able to take the stairs. And I was like, okay, well, it started in India. So I started looking at all that and I was like, was it something Gary said? Was it in the class? Did somebody else? Like, it was like, but it was none of that. None of that read for me. I'm like, okay. So what happened just before that? So I was looking, and then all of a sudden I realized that just before that is when this person had told me that they had changed their mind. And that in that moment that I remembered that, it was like this, my body had this huge release. And I recognized I didn't tell me. It wasn't about even telling them. It wasn't even about saying how wrong they were or bad. It was not that at all. It was actually me saying to me, hey, that sucks. Hey, I'm disappointed. Hey, I'm hurt. Not staying in the story of it, not then utilizing that as ammunition to, to upset them or like none of that, but just the honesty with me. And guys, within that, acknowledgement of that, and continuing to do some body processes and some clearings, done. Gone. I do not have anything going on with my knees whatsoever. They are beautiful. They are delicious. I've never went back to the chiropractor to have more x-rays taken to see if it's still there, because I know it's not there. And I know that what he saw and what I saw on the x-ray also, so I don't mean he was wrong, what was on the x-ray wasn't arthritis. It was the result of me not acknowledging to me what was true for me. Now, not just the one time. Believe me, I have done that. I would have been 43 at the time. So for 43 years, I was very good at not telling me what was true for me, about reasoning and justifying other people, about seeing other people's full potential and living in the fantasy that that's what they're going to choose. And then when they didn't, I got to judge me. If I just would have been better, if I just would have tried harder, if I just would have said this other thing, if I... Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. So start being honest with you about what works for you, what's true for you, and don't buy the lie that you have to tell anybody, because you actually don't. There might be a time where it is time, but even in that situation that I was talking about, it wouldn't have mattered whether I would have said to them, hey, I'm disappointed. Well, that would have made no difference whatsoever, except that, that would have meant me acknowledging it to me. All I needed to do was tell me, hey, this isn't okay in my world. It's not that it's not okay. It's not that they should have chose something different. It's not, none of that. But I'm disappointed. I'm hurt. Totally different with the honesty with ourselves. And so if you, well, not if, you, well, if you have capacities, which I'm sure you do, and I'm trying not to say it as though you have to have them, but if you have capacities with seeing the full potential in other people, then you really want to be taking this on as what are they choosing right now, and does it work for you? Because then you can start being honest with you, and then from that space you can change anything. But when you're not honest with you, you can't change anything, and then it becomes where it feels like you're in a constant loop, a constant fight, a constant struggle, and usually all of that energy is directed at you. Usually then you're judging you, you're frustrated with you, you're mad at you. If only you'd have done this, if only you'd have said this, if only... Right, wrong, good, bad, all nine, POD POC, charts, poison, beyonds. So that is the Access Consciousness Clearing Statement. You can go to theclearingstatement.com for more information about how it works. Basically, it is freaking magic. And so it's just looking at that for yourself in the areas of your life where this is a bigger thing, where you are living from the fantasy or from the lie of what somebody's choosing. And really just to start acknowledging it for you. It's just for you. We have a phrase in Access that we say, just for us, just for me, just for fun, never tell anyone. And this truly, what's true for you and what works for you doesn't necessarily have to be shared with anyone. Now, if it's something that, is in, like with the boss example I was using earlier, where you're saying to them, hey, this needs to be different, then, yeah, then you need to let them know. And then if that doesn't change it, then you still have choice, right? They've given you some great information. Even you talking to them about it isn't changing it. So now what can you choose? Instead of playing the victim, playing the upset, the intrigue, talking to everybody on the street about how horrible your boss is, what choice do you have available? And one of the questions I love is, what choice am I refusing that I truly could be choosing, that if I would choose it would change this, whatever this is in the moment? Yeah, so all the choices that you're refusing, will you destroy and uncreate them all, return them to sender with consciousness, right, wrong, good, bad, all nine, POD, POC, shorts, boys, and beyonds. Because each one of us has infinite choice. Every person on the planet has infinite choice. It's whether or not we're aware of that or not, and that's based on our points of views. So if you have the point of view that your boss is mean or bosses are mean, then you have less choice available to you with regards to bosses than somebody who doesn't have that point of view. So we go back to kind of the basics in Access, which is your point of view creates your reality. So if you look at those points of views, what are the points of views you could change to change that experience? Yeah. And of course the tool, such a simple tool, but still one I use all the time, all day long. Interesting point of view, I have that point of view. Interesting point of view, I have that point of view. Or you could even look at, one of the people that maybe you've done this with and you've got a fantasy around, and as I've been talking, you've become more and more aware of the fantasy. You can just kind of be aware of them and you and the dynamic, and just, interesting point of view, I have this point of view. Interesting point of view, I have this point of view. Interesting point of view, I have this point of view. Interesting point of view, I have this point of view. Interesting point of view, I have this point of view. Just a few times even, and for me at least, it creates so much space. I have so much more awareness. I have so much more, I'm aware of so many more choices that I actually have available to me. So that tool can change everything, and it can also allow you to get out of the judgment, because some of that is, a lot of that is judgment, right? If we're aware of somebody's full potential and they're not choosing it, then we either judge them because they're not choosing it, or we judge ourselves because they're not choosing it, which, it's all ridiculous. So that can be where you also use interesting point of view, I have this point of view, so that you can just let them choose. Like, what a novel concept. Let people around you choose for them. And I say novel concept because you guys know, if you've listened to me for a while, you know I am the queen of superior bitching. I should really have a crown made from the past. So I don't do it near as much. I am way more aware of it now. Way more, not 110%, but way more aware of it now than I've ever been willing to be before. And I really am allowing people more and more and more to choose for them, which, it sounds even ridiculous to say out loud, but I know so many of us live from that place of it's our job to protect them, it's our job to take care of them, it's our job to jump in and save them, it's our job to no, because guess what? If you do that, they'll never have their own awareness. They'll never have their own awareness. Yeah, last year, one of my nieces got into this really amazing dance group. And the dance group themselves had some rules. And one of them was there was no gossiping tolerated. And anyway, it doesn't matter. That was the rule. Anyway, so lots of rules. And so I knew this. And she was talking to me one day about that and how her and her friend were talking about, basically they were gossiping. And I remember everything in my body was like, I've got to tell her not to do that. Like, she's breaking the rules. She's going to get kicked. Like, all of that kicked in. And I realized like that. So if at 12 years old she gets kicked out of this dance group because she didn't follow the rules, wouldn't that be a better time to have that experience than, I don't know, when she's 25 or 40 or something like that? Like, but if I jump in and save her every time, one, I give her the energetic message that I know better than her, and I don't for her. I don't for her. Nobody knows better for any one of us than ourselves. And the other thing that I do is I make that my job, where my job is my life. Her job is her life. So if I'm jumping in and doing that, it just becomes really, really unkind. And I know, guys, we're not taught that. We're taught that it's kind to help, it's kind to jump in, it's kind to fix. It's not. It's not. If people aren't asking for that assistance, shut the fuck up. It's Gary's wise words to me so many times. Glenyce, shut the fuck up. Because it is. It's a capacity. So it's not that being a superior bitch is wrong or bad. It's not, or a superior bastard. It's a capacity that each one of us probably has. Again, I won't project that onto you. I won't be a superior bitch and tell you that is for you, but it might be, so you can check in for yourself. And so then utilize it as a capacity. If somebody was, I don't know, if I was walking down the street and there was a kid going to run after a ball and there was a car coming, I would utilize my capacity as a superior bitch and stop them. Absolutely. So when it creates greater, utilize it. When it doesn't, shut up. Oh, I laugh because it's all for me, guys. It's all for me. That's just something that, yeah. So anyway. Oh, how I entertain myself. Now, what else is possible with allowing people to choose for themselves and allowing people to show you what they're choosing and allowing yourself to be aware of it all with no point of view? Anything that doesn't allow that, we destroy and uncreate it all. Right, wrong, good, bad, all nine. Putt, puck, shorts, boys, and beyonds. Have an awesome week, sweet friends. It is a beautiful summer day here in September, and I am heading to the pool. So have a good one, and I look forward to chatting again soon.